Can I email it from you to you?
You can put it in the rapid chat.
No.
Remind me after we get done with this, and I'll I need to send her videos of the rapid stuff that I have. I think from that promo thing, I need to check my drive and make sure I have it. Since you're here, we need to email it.
Yeah. I said Mother said he's gonna try to stop by, but he has something to do with.
It was like a grad student show. Yeah. I think it was a BFA show or something.
Yeah. Hope you guys sweatpants on that monitor.
I'm in sweatpants, so.
Yeah, but your sweatpants are like cool sweatpants.
I mean, they can't see that.
It just like slides and
Where do we put this in the Slack? Is that where we put this?
yeah, it's in the general channel.
Okay. There it is.
What did he send out? I think that they can also ask questions up there, right?
Yeah, they can like pop up in a little message chat thing.
Oh, so
They're watching on YouTube and they
no, that link just took me to Google Hangouts.
Oh, it did?
Yeah,
So you just be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Can the viewers on YouTube watch the?
I don't know.
Yeah, but you should, if it's on YouTube. Right?
Oh yeah, I can join the video call. I'm gonna go to YouTube.
So you're gonna pop up on it? We're all just like investigating.
I need to know what this does.
It's really weird when you do. Have you, any of you guys done Instagram Live?
Did it work? Oh, yep, I'm right there.
Look at that.
It's really weird when you do Instagram Live because like when no one's there, you're like, well, what do I do now? And as soon as someone's there, you're like, oh, people.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, the people are like, whoa, I'm just a person trying to watch it.
Oh gosh, the
I
lag.
get so excited. There are a lot of them.
I'll tell you when that hand move shows up.
It's still not there.
Wow. There it is.
Wow, it's like
Probably WVU.
15 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
one of us
the-
curses, we close the stream.
Yeah, but I have a feeling the stream would definitely be more responsive to closing than it would be the transmission, wouldn't you think?
Probably. All right. Did we send the invite to Ben? I thought you were doing that. I'm doing that now. Okay, let's send to wear warm boots and
Yeah,
then
you
they will
just-
have extra gear for us.
Yeah.
So like snow boots?
Yeah, I was like, is that what you mean?
I have some Adidas that are like waterproof.
Do you have any of those duck boots?
Probably with them.
Do you have duck boots, like those rubber ones? Those would probably do good for 7.
I hate them, so.
It's like a 10-second delay.
Me and my best friend from high school, we do like Instagram Live stories every once in a while. And we only use it because it's really easy to talk to each other because I can see the screen.
Oh, just send it to Ben?
Yeah.
His screen at the same time. But we also like it because like our family members like chime and talk to us while we're having a conversation. We literally, it's like we're having a conversation that anyone that's following us can hear and we're aware of it. But like we just talk about like how we've been doing, what we're up to, things like that. He lives in New York City, so he'll just like hang the camera out of like the window of a skyscraper. You're like, this is what it looks like right now. There's a ton of snow on the ground. It's a cool place to.
Okay, so it doesn't pop up on here because I just put a comment on the video on YouTube and it didn't.
Oh no.
I think it has to be through the.
Probably had something for his story.
Hey.
Hey.
It has to be through Hangout. You'll download Google Hangout.
Yeah, I have Hangouts, but I was saying like as someone was like watching something.
Magnetic, they put together.
Still casually.
Yeah,
Really
it's like it is
I think
addicted
here.
to just sit here and it's like
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
sure what it was. I don't know what brand it is. It's nothing like that. It's not
Oh,
brand.
I can click on him.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
So you can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, perfect.
I was thinking the same thing.
Turn the volume up.
This sound bar, we've been talking about the sound bar in film club a lot, and about how the sound bar just doesn't project enough for what if you
Yeah,
have a big audience.
it's at 100.
Yeah.
The volume.
All right, can you hear us?
Yeah,
Sweet,
Awesome.
that's better, yeah.
yeah, it sounds good.
So Ben, this is the organization right now. I told you it's a little. This is the first semester for them, so we're
Okay.
bringing in more people. But these guys are really into immersive tech, and really, I was just showing them the stuff that you've done, drones and 360, and I don't know what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit about like what you're hot on right now, and what you think is, what they have a lot of different interests. Like some are into gaming, some are into 360, some are into 3D modeling, drones, so all over the place.
Well, so how about, because I've got a few slides that I can show, which will touch on all that stuff to varying degrees, and maybe you already showed some of what I'm going to show, but I was thinking, I guess first I can just do a brief introduction, but then I'm curious about what everybody in the room is interested in. That way, maybe I can touch more on certain things and less on others. But how does that sound? So just to kind of keep it informal.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So yeah, I'm Ben Kreimer. I call myself a storytelling technologist. My background is in journalism. A lot of my work over the past few years has been in journalism, but in the past couple of years, I've actually been getting more into the international development storytelling realm, because a lot of the skills and the tools that I've been using and working with in the context of journalism are applicable outside. And plus, it's kind of nice because in development, in some cases, there's more money to be made, which means you can do interesting development projects and do journalism work where there might not be any money or very little money. So there's a balance there that I've been trying to work out. But I got started working with drones at the University of Nebraska about 5 years ago, I think, 6 years ago. And from there, just kind of continued going on this emerging storytelling, emerging technology track, approaching new technologies that come out as new tools for journalists and for storytellers in other domains. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about what you're interested in and working on?
We're going to just start, go around. We can just start on one end and work our way around.
Hi, my name is Meredith Eddy. I'm a graduate student here at WVU. In Rapid, I've been working a lot with trying to figure out photogrammetry stuff. We have a rig with like one camera and a spinning platform, and we have these pieces that we're trying to take pictures of it, figure out what's the right lighting, the right focal length to get just the crispest photo, and then taking them into, I think it's Autodesk recap photos, and getting them correct without having the background become this weird amorphous blob just on the model.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like that. And then we're working on a 360 puppet show where the viewer is within a band of scenery and the puppets are moving around them. So we're trying to do some stuff with spatial sound in that.
That's interesting. I love it. Very cool. Very cool.
I'm Jake. I'm a visual journalism student at WVU. I'm a junior, and I'm very into like YouTube and like the analytics of it. But I've also been recently over Christmas, I got a Mavic, so I've been flying my Mavic Pro a lot, just kind of getting a feel for filming in the air essentially, and then just trying to figure out like what my brand is on YouTube and messing with some 360 as well.
Are you interested in? Because I'll definitely talk about this and I'll share some information on it. But say using your Mavic to do 360 video, is that of interest?
Yeah, actually, right before our spring break, me and David and a couple of the other people were all hanging out over in an indoor track facility, and we mounted the Fusion underneath my Mavic, and we didn't turn off the ground sensors, so it took quite a beating. I mean, I had to open up the drone and rewire the camera back in.
The Fusion was okay.
The Fusion completely. Luckily, he told me to keep the case on it, so it hit the wall at like, I don't know, 15 or 20 miles an hour, and then dropped to the concrete about 20 feet.
Wow.
It tore it up pretty bad, but everything was fixed for a lot less money than I thought it was going to take to fix it. But it was a learning experience to figure out. I thought just turning it into sport mode and shutting off the GPS would do it, but I'd forgotten that there were ground obstacle avoidance sensors, and it was trying to escape itself the whole time. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in aerial 360 video. It's been something we've talked about trying to test the waters with for sure.
I'm Mark Schoenster. I'm a sports and adventure media major. I'm a freshman, so I'm just getting my feet wet into all this. But earlier this semester, I shot 360 footage of our men's basketball team playing at our home at the Coliseum. So that was really cool to do. And right now, I'm just trying to get a little taste of everything.
Cool. Very cool.
Hi, Justin Clem. I'm a graphic design major, like the odd one out here. I'm really trying to explore like visual storytelling and interactive media. We're doing a Snapchat AR project where we're kind of just doing a workshop and showing people how to make AR filters. But I really want to explore augmented reality and things like that. And I'm also helping with 360 puppet videos, so we've been playing with 360 a bit. And it's interesting from a design standpoint to kind of see how this stuff, how 360 video and like aerial footage can really be used in like narrative design.
I'm Shayla. I'm a journalism major. I have the most experience with 360, but like I like it all, but I'm most experienced with 360, and I really would like to learn more about AR, but I just don't know. Support that yet, so it's like one of my like goals, and I'm working on the puppet show with Meredith.
I'm Bree. I have been the one communicating with you about this. I'm really interested in augmented reality and 360 video. I've been doing a lot of 360 lately. And tomorrow, David and I actually have a shoot where we're doing 360 in a watershed. Go down, and we're also going to put the 360 camera on the drone and hope for the best.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see. I'll share my screen
One
here.
more thing that I'm kind of interested in that I don't know if you've messed with at all, but I've heard of people doing underwater 360, but the issue with that being that when you put a straw in water, it has the diffraction, so the straw goes in, and then below the surface of the water, it's offset a little bit, and because of that, the 360 camera has a lot of issues with stitching. It has, like, I don't know, it's really disorienting, I guess, to the software to kind of pinpoint where the seam is and put things together. But there's people have done videos, so I know it's possible, and I don't know if you have any experience or research knowledge on that subject either.
Yeah, actually, I'll show. I worked on a project. I'll show that. I'll show you right now. Okay, so, and I'll add too that my approach has largely been over the years has been about demonstrating what's possible and it's accessible financially. So like with the underwater 360, where we can start right there, right now. Yeah, that was, I did a project in Tanzania, which I'll pull up here and then share my screen. Did a project in Tanzania on the coast about aquaculture. And let's see.
Hi.
Jake's girlfriend just popped up.
Oh, bye. She probably didn't realize she was gonna.
There we go.
I'm gonna get a text here in a second.
She can go on YouTube.
Yeah, she was.
Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, because we don't need if we get like 5 or 6 people watching at once, they're all gonna be dots on the bottom of the monitor.
Sent.
Like use this link instead.
Okay, you can see my screen okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the note of underwater 360, did a project about a year ago in Tanzania about aquaculture, specifically about fish farms, as well as a seaweed growing operation. So there's a team of women working under the name Sea Power, and they grow seaweed, or they used to grow seaweed in these shallow water seaweed farms. So you can see flower here standing in very shallow water. But what they're doing now is working in deeper water. So find it. Here we go. Okay. So here, this here was shot with a rig that I'll show in a moment. But yeah, we did some underwater 360 work. And prior to working on this project, show another clip here. Yeah, here we go. Sounds nice. There are very few options for underwater 360, or at least there were, especially a year ago. And what we found was the sort of the best bang for your buck came out of a hacked together solution, which, let's see if I can find it here quickly. Ooh, is anybody familiar with Shapeways?
No, I'm not.
3D. What's that?
They've been using it in the interactive media design class.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, so can you see this this 360 Abyss 360 camera rig?
So is the GoPros going there?
Yes. So this is for GoPros. The problem is that the rig itself is almost $7,000 minus the cameras, and so what we used was this here. So for underwater 360, actually the GoPro Fusion, now that it's out, what I've seen has looked good, has looked real good, even with the refraction issue and the stitching. But what we used at the time a year ago was this kit here, where we had 3 of the Kodak SP360 4K cameras, and they were held together by this triangular piece in the middle, which is a Shapeways printed. It's basically it's a 3D printed block of plastic. But Shapeways is cool because, and I've got some work on Shapeways that I'll show in a moment. But basically, you can design something that you would 3D print yourself, and then you can sell it. So in this case, it's still pretty expensive with the 3 Kodak cameras, but this is one way of doing underwater. But the GoPro Fusion, from what I've seen, does a good job as well. And let's see. But so then to jump into the drone side of things, let's see here. All right, so this here I'll show you kind of the evolution of the drone 360 stuff that I've done. A lot of this is sort of, it's outdated, and I wouldn't recommend that you build this, for example, but it gives you an idea of how you can build your own tools and actually do cool stuff. And this is what I've been doing. And when I was at BuzzFeed, producing a 360 video with a hacked together 360 drone that got over 6 million views. So some of my work at BuzzFeed was early on when I started. I was there for a year back in 2015 and 2016 as a fellow in their open lab, which no longer exists, unfortunately. The lab itself was kind of an experiment that they ended up shutting down, which is not uncommon for media R&D labs in the media space. But anyway, so this here was the original 360 drone that I put together using a DJI Phantom 2 drone and 2 GoPros and a 3D printed mount. It's pretty much a stock drone other than adding some spacers to the legs. But then there was the mount for the GoPros. And so using that, it shot video like this, which in fall of 2015 was pretty good for a sort of a portable, small 360 rig, because that was before the Samsung Gear 360 and before the action camera 360 cams that are available now. But after that, the problem was that the drone was in the shot, and I wanted to be able to get rid of the drone so that you just had a seamless 360 experience. And so to prototype that, I took the 2 GoPros that I'd been using, and those GoPros had 190-degree field of view lenses. So they're like what you would have on a Samsung Gear 360 or on the GoPro Fusion. So just aftermarket lenses. But to prototype this, and this was actually flyable, but I just used 2 chunks of cut foam and some cable ties and just, ratcheted everything down to the drone. And it worked as a proof of concept. But it was super crude. And so the obvious evolution of that was when the Mavic came out. The Mavic is still actually a great platform for doing aerial 360. And I'm using the Kodak SP360 cameras. So the interesting thing is that the trend over the past 2 years has been to build the sort of low-cost consumer 360 cameras into an all-in-one unit, which is great for everybody except those of us that want to hack our cameras and do something like this, where you have a small drone and you want to do 360 video where you want the drone to disappear. And so I actually sell these pieces, and I can send you the 3D the files so you can print your own. But
we have printers.
Yeah, I know you do. So what's that?
Have you been here as a guest for anything?
No, I think Jeffrey told him that.
No, I've only spoken over Hangouts.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've got this Shapeways page, so people can go and they can buy these, or I can send you guys the file so you can 3D print your own. But there's also a parts list. Basically, to build this out, you need the 3D printed camera mounts for the Kodaks, and then there are some rubber dampeners that are available on Amazon, and the cable ties, and some kind of this green gummy anti-vibration gel that kind of works in addition to the rubber dampeners. But together, it all works really well. I'll show you an example. So
does the drone handle differently because of the payload on it?
Yeah, good question. The answer is a little bit, in that you lose flight time. So instead of getting maybe 27, 28 minutes of flight time, you're down to about 20, 21, 22. So you lose a few minutes of flight time depending on the conditions. But other than that, the drone handles fine. The motors will get warmer, even hot, which is a little bit unnerving. But I've flown the drone in 100-degree weather and not had an issue. So as far as I'm concerned, and I've flown it at very high wind where the app is actually warning me that it's too windy to be flying. And so my impression is that the Mavics can handle this, and I've never had an issue that says otherwise. And so the video is really nice because it is seamless, like here off of Zanzibar. And so the drone's gone. It's a completely seamless stitch. But to do that, you have to use, I use Mystica VR to do the stitching. So the Kodak cameras come with free software for stitching, but they're designed, the software is basically calibrated to stitch the Kodak cameras in their stock configuration. So when the cameras are back to back, which is the way they're designed to be used. But so the downside is, in order to use this drone kit, you do need the higher end Mystica VR stitching software. And then you do have to stabilize the video because there's no gimbal involved with the drone. And so you can stabilize the 360 video either in After Effects, and then Mystica VR also has a stabilization feature that they've added to it more recently. So
you can see with the, you run the Mavic's gimbal camera that's on the front of it whenever you're flying, and then you just start the recording and take off. And
yeah, so that's the great thing about the Mavic is I fly it like I would any other time. It's got the I'm running the DJI app, piloting using the camera in the front, because the only alternative would be, for example, if you were flying a 3D robotic solo, like you can actually buy, Kodak sells a mounting kit so that you can do 360 video with the 3D robotic solo. The downside is that when you do that, you lose the GoPro video feed that you would otherwise use to fly the drone. And so you can, you could use the bottom GoPro, or excuse me, the bottom Kodak camera on the solo to pilot, but you're then looking through a fixed camera with a 235-degree field of view, super warped fisheye lens. It's really hard to fly and dangerous. It's a terrible idea. And to ruin it even more, the Kodaks do not let you, if you're recording in the highest quality video mode, which you would want to do, obviously, it will not let you do a live video feed out in the highest quality video mode. So you're then also restricted in terms of video quality. So the Mavic, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, is still that hacked together Mavic kit is still the best way to do drone 360, unless you have money for a big heavy lift drone and can attach a larger camera on the bottom, or if you want to do like you were doing, where you attach the camera to the bottom of the drone, but then you still have the top. The drone is still in the shot. So if you want that kind of seamless 360, the Mavic is still probably it is for sure the easiest way to go and cheapest by far.
I've seen a tutorial on the internet actually yesterday where people were stitching. They took the similar setup to what you have, but they didn't use that expensive software that you said you have to use. They just used Premiere and essentially masked out the drone by flipping the footage right side up on the one. So they'd have the two shots. They'd take the bottom shot and flip it 180 degrees so it matches right side up with the rest of it. And then they clean it out essentially with the pen tool and masked out. It wasn't perfect. There was a lot of like, I don't know, like the similar effect you get if you were using the warp stabilizer and there was too much in the background on Premiere, where you have that little like warping distortion kind of thing going on, but it was usable footage.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, I've not come across that, but it sounds promising.
Than that setup did, for sure.
What's that?
Your setup looked a lot better than the using Premiere.
Yeah.
Like, a lot less hard to notice.
Yeah. Let's see. On the photogrammetry side of things, let's see. So I think the easiest way to get into doing, I'll share my screen real quick. Okay, so there's a great, have you guys played with Sketchfab at all? In terms of if you have 3D models uploading to Sketchfab, they've got their Sketchfab app, which has AR functionality as well as VR functionality.
Visit that.
What's that?
The bird model.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Something like if you guys are ever shooting this up here, I'd like to know if you actually show up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand the concept, but not how to, not the process. Like I understand how.
Okay.
When the
So
It does.
so this here was. Did you guys see this already by chance?
I think, you know what, before you logged on, we were looking at the one, I don't know, did you bring it into Unity and like put a style?
Yeah.
I think we were watching the video where you were, yeah, that,
This
right?
one.
We were watching, yeah.
Right. So
That's crazy.
So this, yeah, I mean, these models here, these environments that are in Unity and being explored using an HTC Vive, they are also accessible. I mean, they're produced using photogrammetry and using 200 or fewer images each of these environments,
Wow.
which is amazing. It still amazes me.
Are they like cameras or are they 360 or?
Wait, say again?
The images, you say only 200 or fewer. Are they panoramic images or like?
No.
Few images.
Yeah, it's a lot of detail for the amount of information.
Yeah, they are images. They're just what 4,000 by 3,000 pixel JPEGs, and they were captured using the DJI for these environments. These archaeological sites. They were captured using a DJI Phantom 3 Pro, and but one thing I'll point out that is cool if you're interested in photogrammetry, there's a feature that I haven't tried that I'm really curious to try, where with Pix4D, you can actually do, you can use 360-degree panorama images to do photogrammetric reconstructions. I don't know how well it works. I have not tried it yet, but you can pick up a free trial of Pix4D Mapper, which is the software. There's different versions of Pix4D. But Pix4D Mapper is the one that has that feature in it. And so if you're curious and you want to experiment, you can give that a shot. But yeah, I'm not sure how well it works. I'm really curious. I want to see. I just haven't gotten around to it.
So we could just take a series of 360 photos, still photos, around in this room and recreate the room. Is that?
Sounds like Matterport almost.
Yeah, kind of like the Matterport.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. It can't be that easy, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, if it were that easy, then why would they sell Matterports, right? Yeah.
Well, but Matterport came out before. I mean, Matterport's been around, what, 3-4 years? I mean, this feature is, I don't know when exactly it came out, but I'm guessing it was within the past 6 months that Pix4D made this possible. And I know that there was another company, Gyroptic, which was a 360 camera manufacturer that recently went under, but they were working on a similar feature where you could use a 360 camera to do photogrammetry. So Matterport was just ahead of the curve by a long ways. But their system is also different. I mean, the Matterport camera sits on a tripod and then it rotates going around taking photos. Then it's also got other sensors in it. So it's also different. But I mean, like with all this stuff, it's all kind of interwoven, which is interesting.
I mean, I think a lot of, like you said, that a lot of what you've done is like make things more accessible and cheaper and like, you know, within a lot of people's like financial reach, right? Consumer level. So like that idea of taking like what's a $4,500 camera and being able to do that with like a $200 camera in this app would follow what you're trying to do, right? I mean, it's kind of
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I like
Absolutely.
that, especially since we don't have a lot of money to do.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't.
What's the difference between, like, why can't I set up a tripod and shoot 360 pictures? What's the hold up between that? Is it because there's no spatial data attached to those 3D images? That Matterport has a leg up on 360?
That's a good question. So you're talking about when it comes to doing a photogrammetry reconstruction?
Yeah, why can't you do it with 360? Why is it only with Matterport right now?
Well, okay. As I recall, the Matterport camera has some kind of, it's not just a visual wavelength sensor. It's got some other kind of sensor in it for depth.
We had one for like a year, and it was awesome to play with because it was just like press a button on the iPad app and it would just do everything. But it had like 6 different combinations. Like it had like center facing and then up and down facing, like diagonal, like 45-degree facing, regular still camera, and then also an infrared camera that would like sense the spatial data. So for every scan that it was doing, it was taking a spatial map of the room and creating like point cloud or whatever. And then so you move it 7 feet, and then it would do another one. So it's like much more precise than. I mean, I guess to get that level of precision, you probably have to take like hundreds of 360 photos, like inches apart. Yeah. So it's more precise. I think it always would be, but than like a 360 camera. But if you could do it for cheaper and it's almost as good, that would be awesome.
So I mean, it would be enough for us to understand the concept and explore how to use the equipment and the technology to tell stories.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, there's something else I want to show you guys because of your interest in AR. So you've probably seen by now the New York Times. This isn't my project, but so AR is a space that I've not really worked in yet because of other projects in other areas. But the interesting thing is, again, I will show a real quick example, which is what I was going to show earlier. But 2 things. One, there's the whole 3D, placing an object into your space, like what the New York Times has been doing with their Olympians, with the Bowie costumes most recently. There's a lot of that kind of AR happening. And a real easy way for you to do that too, without actually doing any development work on your end, would just be to upload a 3D model to Sketchfab. And you can then, using their Sketchfab app, you can do just that with whatever you've uploaded, which is, it's novel, but at the same time, you also need their app in order for somebody to access it, which obviously has its limitations, but it works well. It looks like this here. So this here, I mean, this is just that. This is using the Sketchfab app and that same 3D environment that is in the Vive is here in AR in my backyard. But yeah, so it's easy to do if you want to play around with AR just to play. And if you've got 3D models, or even if you don't, you can just download the Sketchfab app and play around with their AR feature, so which works well.
You imported the file into the app, and then it tracks it to the space, and you're walking around with your phone there looking at the model?
Right, yeah, so I'm just walking around with my iPad, but I didn't actually upload the model to the app. What it's doing is Sketchfab has you, how should I say? Sketchfab has it set up so that when you upload, okay, so Sketchfab is like YouTube for 3D content. And so here, for example, again, let's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Sketchfab is YouTube for 3D, and that this here is a 3D model in the Sketchfab. This is like being on the YouTube page watching a YouTube video. So here in this video, I've got my 3D model. I've uploaded it to Sketchfab, and I'm interacting with it in the home in this on Sketchfab, on the Sketchfab website. But at the same time, I can also embed the model into social media and do the same kind of interaction. And it works on mobile devices too. But also, once you've uploaded your model, you can also find it in the Sketchfab app. And that's where you have the AR functionality. So as long as you've uploaded it once to Sketchfab in the browser, you can then access it elsewhere, including in their app, which is where they have the AR functionality. And you can just download the app and try it now and play with anybody's 3D model that they've shared. But on the AR front, there's a really interesting example of something that's not just a 3D model in the environment. I have to find it real quick. Let's see. There was a project. Let's see. As you can see, I have a billion tabs open. Okay, it's Nest Augmented Reality. Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. So there was a project that somebody did where they took, they created 3D models in Unity and loaded them into their iPhone, went out into the real world and placed here it is. They placed the 3D models into the actual environment where they were, and then recorded it on their screen, which that probably doesn't make any sense, but it will here in this video. Okay. So it's a project called Nest. Where'd it go? Shoot.
So
here we go.
Ben, Jake is scheming of how to create fake news with recording AR.
Yeah. Okay, can you see this YouTube video?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening here is this person holding the gun is not a real person. It's a CG character. But the environment in the background, like that white truck, that's real, okay? Yeah. So what's happening is so the CG character is an AR projection into this cityscape, and the individual who produced it is using their iPhone and recording this. It's like a movie.
Yeah. So how do they make the person's actually, they're not like a stationary thing, they're moving.
The character?
Yeah, like the character's got an animation to him.
Right. So basically it's I don't know the specifics, but essentially it's a 3D character that was, I believe they used Unity and they programmed, they developed this character to do this, to walk like that. There was another, what's the movie? There's a horror movie where where there's a scene where a girl, a sort of possessed demonic girl, comes up to the television screen and then comes out of it.
I've seen that one, yeah.
Okay, there was an AR experience that somebody built of that girl who comes out of the screen and comes at you.
Yeah.
I had nightmares for years as a kid watching.
I think the AR, the AR experience was creepier than the movie. That was like really scary.
Yeah, and then the girl walks down the hallway and follows you. Yeah.
That I saw was like in an office building or something. Yeah.
What gets me is the fact that these, like, how do you, like, there's got to be a starting reference point. Then these animations begin, and you have to follow them as they go away from the phone, and the animated person's referencing the phone's location.
It might not even be that.
But,
You
yeah,
could probably just animate it in Unity and have it move across the screen and just know based on the locations that you're going to film how you need to move.
Perspective wise. Oh, so
Yeah.
you're responding to the animation instead of the
Probably.
animation
Yeah.
responding to you.
Because
Because that was the big thing. That was like, how did they get to the point where like as this thing's animating, it's walking away, and if it goes off frame of the phone's view, like, is the animated character behind you but not visible because it's off the screen? That's what I was thinking.
I think, I mean, just like what I know, which I haven't done much with air yet, but just based on what I know, if you can get the plane detection on the ground,
Yeah.
then you can
You can
put
put it anywhere.
you can put it there, and then it'll start its animation. It'll move
If you
around.
go behind you and if you're not looking at it, it's still animated.
Yeah.
Before you can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably.
That's what I was thinking was happening here. Is like as soon as when he's panning the camera, he's like essentially framing up this animation that once it cues to render and play, it takes off on its own. That's wild.
It'd be a project.
yeah,
That would be
yeah,
such a-
right.
This is like almost when I found the first 360 video I saw, and I was like, late at night. I stayed up an extra 3 hours later than I intended to. And it was already late, but I was just like, I didn't know we were here already in technology. Like, it didn't feel like real to me that we were able to do this yet. And then this is a whole nother one of those moments again. That's cool.
You can totally like
Someone's a little
play up the
If you did
narrative that
something
you
like
can't see
Unreal-
that goes
Unreal
set
Engine,
through your
yeah.
camera. And
They
then
just released
Imagine
it.
Dead
some
Space
sort
or
of-
something like
sort
that.
of-
Yeah,
Dead
yeah.
Space
Using
that-
something
interactive
that's even
experience
more,
with
because
that.
Unity obviously
Yeah.
has some limitations. I don't know how far is the software to render that
You use the
in
basketball court as a
an
reference.
AR kit. I don't know how much resources
Instead
it
of
could take something
presentation,
just put a real
you
estate
use basketball court.
and put it into.
You know what I mean? Like it would track the
Yeah,
ground
yeah.
that's flying.
Let Justin say what he's talking about.
So I see they're using Unity for like that animation there, and
Right.
obviously Unity, I mean, it's a game engine. It still has some limitations, and it's definitely not as far along as some other game engines are. Imagine taking something like Unreal
Oh,
and
gosh.
the amount of photorealism that they have in that, putting that into AR experience. I mean, that's just scary at that point. You get so close to what could be mistaken as reality. It's
That is a quick glance if you aren't in full resolution.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Full
the thing, you would
resolution.
think that
Full
if
resolution.
you were watching if it buffered and it went down to like 480p, I don't know. I would have been able to tell that little animated person wasn't real.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
And it helps with the black and white too in that.
Yeah.
They definitely have some fidelity with that.
I think like early, because we're kind of early in the AR, like, you know, whatever time frame or whatever. But like you kind of at the beginning of things, like at the beginning of like when you first started shooting 360, Ben, like what we would call low quality now was just blowing people's minds, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, like AR is, I feel like it's in the same place right now. You know, like I was just looking at the Olympians in my living room, and I was just like blown away. But then the more I started looking at like different AR experiences, the more I was like, wait, that's a little low res. I don't really buy it. So,
Okay. Here's another project that you guys should check out if you're interested in AR, which obviously you are. It's called The Enemy. And what it is, I'll pull it up. It's, let's see, The Enemy. So there's an app and a VR component to this. What it is it allows you to engage with combatants. So in the AR version, I don't know if they have a. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So in the screen, on the right side of the screen, so it brings these war combatants, criminal. So like guerrilla warfare, or individuals from guerrilla wars, terrorists, into your own space, and it's kind of this blend between journalism and art, somewhere in the middle, in that it's not a hard news project in the sense that, these guys, the people who worked on the project, they didn't go out to do journalism where everything was fact checked. And I know this because I talked to one of the developers. They were going after the personal stories, the testimonies of these individuals to sort of humanize these combatants. And the way the AR experience works, you should try it out. They did a couple things that were really noteworthy. One, they used Depth Kit to create the basic 3D models of the people. So, do you guys have a Depth Kit system?
Yeah, we do, and one of the other faculty members has been using it. And I haven't really had time to apparently, it's really like finicky to set up and calibrate and everything.
I haven't
messed with it yet.
So they use Depth Kit to do interviews with these combatants and use the Depth Kit model, I don't know what you would call them, animations, the 3D animations, to then from scratch actually develop, basically recreate the people giving the interviews. And so, because if you play with the Depth Kit system or see what's been shot using it, it's got an interesting aesthetic, but it's not realistic, partly because you're only capturing one surface, sort of like half of the body. But in the app, when you look at the models of the people in the app, they look like 8-eye, like an 8-eye production in terms of quality. But what they actually did to produce the enemy was they created from scratch the bodies and the textures and the mesh. So it was a huge endeavor. Huge. I think it took them 3 or 4 years to develop all this because of the complexity of it. But at the same time, as far as I know, they actually started before 8-eye was doing work. But at the same time, you also couldn't bring their subjects, to the 8-eye studio, which is a huge issue when it comes to videogrammetry and using a high-end facility like what 8-eye has to offer. So on the videogrammetry side of things, as it comes back and circles back into AR and VR, there's a lot of innovation yet to be done there in terms of democratization. I hear that to use 8-eye, somebody told me it was $1,000 a second to produce. But they could have been. I don't know if they were thinking it was $1,000 a minute. I don't know. But yeah, I heard $1,000 a second to do those kinds of volumetric animated scans of a person. So, but yeah, the enemy is an interesting project too.
I'm going to drop the 8-eye website into our Slack just so they can see. Yeah, we've actually, one of the things that we've been kind of working on is how do we do like just a full body scan, photogrammetric scan of a person in a small studio that we have with a green screen. And we tried it once. We just kind of like, we haven't had a chance to go back to it, and it didn't really work. And I think it might have had something to do with a combination of like the focal lengths that were of the cameras were all different. And the lighting was weird. It was having a hard time. Like Recap was having a hard time picking out the model and everything. But have you had any experience like capturing people in photogrammetry, using photogrammetry?
No, I've only ever used the structure sensor to do it, and even then, it's only the head, sort of the shoulders and above.
Yeah.
But I will say that. Oh, go on.
Yeah, I think it
What's
works
that? But I don't like Recap. I've been using what?
Neither do I.
Right. Well, I use Capturing Reality. I always get the name and the company mixed up. But yeah, I like Capturing Reality myself.
I think I just saw, Meredith, an email from Dave that our Autodesk subscription has expired. So I think we just need to move on to Capturing Reality.
I would love that. I really would.
Yeah.
I've just struggled so much with AutoCAD because we didn't have like a full license, so we were using like an educator license, and then there was a cap on data, and then
right.
It was very restrictive. In recap photos, editing and deleting points on a 3D model, we were just very limited, and it would only export like 4 or 5 different file types, and I couldn't open any of them in just a normal recap. Whenever I tried to, it would just take me back to recap photo.
Huh, that's weird.
It was the weirdest thing. At one point, we tried exporting the models as OBJs and taking them into Unity, but then there was the learning curve of learning Unity and trying to edit
Right.
it. So we'll have to try capturing reality.
It's got its own quirks, but I like it. I think it works in terms of the time that it takes to process. It's remarkable, and it doesn't. There's no cloud processing. It's all done locally, so you have to have a Windows computer though.
Okay.
With an NVIDIA GPU.
We have. We're good.
Awesome.
We can do that. Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, I would give that a shot. That's what a lot of people are using. It seems, especially in this domain of the surveyors and the archaeologists still gravitate towards Agisoft, like PhotoScan, but people working in the sort of AR, VR, photogrammetry space, what I'm reading a lot, as well as just what I've observed firsthand, is that people are using capturing reality. So actually, capturing reality is the name of the company. Reality captures the name of the software.
Those 2 words. So.
Right.
Thank you so much. Really
Yeah. One interesting feature though of on the videogrammetry side of things. So Agisoft does have, believe it or not, PhotoScan has a 4D, I think they call it a 4D timeline function. So if you're interested in videogrammetry, Agisoft PhotoScan actually has the sort of the workflow built in for doing that processing. I've never used it, but I've read about it. Capturing reality does not, unless you buy a certain subscription to their service, which has a command line interface option. But as you'll see, it costs a couple $1,000s more than the main sort of promo subscription, as they call it. But so the kind of videogrammetry processing is now sort of, that's what's kind of bleeding edge in terms of it's still really hard to do, but you can kind of do it if you have the funds or if you just have the raw processing power. So.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying, in theory, if we had like enough Canon Rebels with kit lenses, we could create a videogrammetry rig and use Agisoft to put it together, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That would be good. Because while we were trying to figure out recap, we had also been using Agisoft at the same time, because with the subscription that we had, the short trial, we would upload our models or our photos to recap, and it would take hours for them to get it back to us. Whereas with Agisoft, maybe like 30 minutes at most, or once we got the number of photos down, it went a lot quicker. And so we were getting more results. It's just the models were not as good or as clean as they were in recap. So
right.
Like, pros and cons of both.
But that's because you weren't processing on the higher quality settings in PhotoScan because of the time it would take. Is that true?
I believe so. It was also, oh gosh. I can't remember what it was. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Because I say that because when you try reality capture, you will be amazed at how fast it works compared to PhotoScan. It's remarkable. I mean, you can on my laptop, I've got 32 gigs of RAM and a GTX 1070 in my Asus laptop, which is over a year. It's a year and a half old now, but I can process 1,200 images on the high setting of reality capture, and it takes 12 hours or so, which would be Agisoft would take, I don't know, 3 times that long, 4 times.
I remember we were on like not the highest setting, but like maybe medium or something, just to get them out faster.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so you'll appreciate the speed
Awesome.
improvement. Yeah.
Awesome. That would be great.
Yeah.
So
And there's also
I'm sorry,
go on.
finish.
There's a really good, I'm trying to think where this is. I found a really great resource. If you're on Twitter, I would follow the Capturing Reality company handle, because they will sometimes post not only interesting projects, but also really good workflow resources. There's one in particular that I recently came across that kind of blew my mind. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. I can't. I'll find it later. I can send it to Bree, but it's really a start to finish. Unity published a workflow guide maybe 3 months ago, but this one I thought was really useful, and it covers everything from the imaging, the camera shoot, to reality capture settings, to they had this interesting workflow to optimize the mesh and the texture, and just things that I didn't know and that I realized I probably should know. They had it all in there, but I can find it. But I found it, through their Twitter handle, because they shared it. Just some developers shared it. So.
Man, I got a question, just like a general question for these guys. It's like there's so many different directions of like so many different emerging technologies. You focused on photogrammetry, 360 video, but you're also interested in AR. How do you choose what to spend your time on? There's so much stuff that you can learn. You could spend forever just learning Unity or after whatever. Yeah. So how do you do it? Is it just your personal interest? You found a couple things that you're really into?
Yeah. Well, there's two answers. One is personal interest is always very important. And I was thinking about that today, because I've been having conversations with people about this shift in emphasis from VR to AR, and how VR hasn't been left in the dust, but at the same time, when you hear the New York Times talking about immersive storytelling, it's in the context of AR now, not in VR. And so I think there is an element, that said, of what's more interesting to you, because there's still a lot of VR happening. And it's, I think, now an interesting time, because the hype has gone away, and yet the tools are still out there. There are still people making it. I think you just have to be a little bit more thoughtful about your approach, as in, do you want to produce journalism VR content, or do you want to get into the medical field, for example? Over at what's left of time in life, Life VR has, although they were acquired by Meredith, their future is uncertain, I suppose, at this point. But right now, they're doing they have an interesting approach to their VR work. So there's the Life VR app, and they've done journalistic work, but they're also doing work that's more in the medical field. And they've got an app called Lumen, and Mia Trams, who is the head of Life VR. I saw her at South by Southwest last week, and she basically said what I've been hearing in terms of how to do this sort of balancing, where you want to do journalism, but you can't make money that way, really, or that hasn't been figured out yet. There's also a lot of ways to use VR in a more evergreen type context, and one example of that would be producing medical VR apps. And I know of a guy in San Francisco. That's what they do, is they produce medical VR. I don't even remember the specifics, but it's content that's for the medical community. In some cases, it can be explaining a surgery, right? Telling that story. And from what I'm hearing, another good example is Story Up, based out of Missouri. So Sarah Hill and Story Up, they were doing more journalistic storytelling, but they've kind of pivoted more into the health space. And they've got an interesting project where, again, another convergence of emerging technology. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a, what is it? EKG. It's these head sensors.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, right. So
with your mind and brain.
yeah,
The waves.
exactly. And there's a consumer mobile device app piece of headgear that you can buy that has an open API, which they've been using. It costs about $200. It's just kind of a headband, looks very sleek. And then there's also much more complicated headgear kits that have more sensors and that go kind of all around your head. And so there's been a fair amount of research, and there are various examples of this kind of mind control VR that's available. But in the case of Story Up and Sarah Hill, they're using it for sort of relaxation and positive thinking. So, and I think they're also exploring AR, but their focus still seems to be in the goggle version in VR. So that said, there is a lot of overlap, say, between AR and VR. I mean, you use the same platforms to develop, Unity and Unreal. The Enemy, that project, it started off as a VR project with volumetric video, and then they added the AR component because, again, I think they were developing in Unity, but it's just a different output. I mean, more or less. There's more work involved than that, but it's just that idea that you're not really shutting yourself into one domain because there's so much overlap between all these tools. And so really, you kind of can't go wrong as long as you do something. I mean, assuming it's interesting to you. So whether it's learn Unity, I mean, yeah, if you learn Unity, you can develop VR content for the medical community. You can develop AR content for the New York Times. Same with or Unity or Unreal. So you kind of are in a win-win position because it seems like whatever you work on, there's going to be overlap in other fields, other industries, other forms of hardware, software, technology, etc. So I guess at this point, it's, I wouldn't follow the trend. I was at the NICAR Data Journalism Conference 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And oh gosh, Simon Johnson from the Google News Lab, he made a comment about these trends in journalism about, it's like drones were going to be the future of journalism, and then VR, and then now it's AR. And his point, which I really liked, was it seems like nobody stays focused on one tool before moving to the next, as in nobody's really figuring it out to a very in-depth degree before they jump to the next platform. But at the same time, they're all interwoven. And so he's right, but at the same time, there's a lot of overlap in terms of skills and whatnot. So, but then too, like with the what is it, the puppet show, the 360. I mean, that's really cool. I think if you're going to work in 360, I had a conversation with a journalist earlier today. Video Lab West, part of the McClatchy sort of experimental sandbox immersive team.
They had a VR thing. I posted it on our Slack.
Yeah.
To apply to do this.
Right. We were talking about that particular application and what they're looking for, and we got into talking about the old stuff of 360 video. 360 is old now, but about how there haven't been a lot of when you look at 360 video, especially in sort of the journalism context, a lot of it's been captured by cameras. You go out into the world, you capture something, you take it back, you produce a story, and then you say, here, you know, I'm going to take you to Tanzania, and I'm going to show you these aquaculture farmers. But it's not imaginative in the sense that there is another project called what is it, 0 Day, about the Stuxnet virus, where you go into a circuit board and you're kind of there with the virus in this, you know, computer generated world. But I mean, that's a whole nother level of immersion, because, you know, anybody can go to Tanzania. I mean, if you can afford the plane ticket, more or less, then you can get yourself to this place. But nobody can actually go into a circuit board and, you know, be side by side with a virus and experience that world, right? And so I think that there's a lot of scope and a lot that can be done to tell stories in these mediums, 360, for example, where you kind of, it goes to that level. Like maybe you go down to the size of an insect and you're in that world. So that scale of what's the scale in relationship to the human scale? What's the scale of the story? So again, I think there's a lot more experimentation that can be done. But then again, it's just, are you interested in it? And do you have that idea to try that out?
The scale of that VR puppet show is kind of taking someone to a scale that they wouldn't normally be.
Right.
Exactly.
People with a person kind of looking down with a book, reading the
play.
It's playing to the power of the medium.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really, really important. I think it needs to be done more in a 360 video.
Yeah.
Growing up, I always wanted to do, like, I love Lego stop motion, and that's what got me into videography, and that's why I do what I do today, is because I love cameras and I love the idea of like telling a story and like showing someone something like that. But I've thought about like one day I hope to like go back and like I guess not let like my childhood self down and like shoot a proper stop motion, even if it's just like the Lego guy like walks from left to right on the screen. Like I want to do it and like actually have it the correct frame rate and like it looks smooth and stuff. But I've thought recently about like, what if I cut a hole in a Lego base plate and then did a Lego stop motion 360, and I could do spatial audio and all that stuff and create an environment. But the only ones I've seen, there's a couple on YouTube, but like the frame rate for them is like 5 frames a second. Like it's really tough. Like, you're almost watching, you could almost like flip through the pages quicker than they're playing them to you. But like
MTGIS did a really good version of 360 video. Did you see it?
With stop motion.
And Most Popular Girls in School, it's like this, like it's a stop motion show. It's like they're only like 10 minutes long or something like that, and it's like they do little Barbie dolls, and they like it's like the girls like all sassy and stuff like that.
It's like a webisode on the
definitely.
Yeah, and so they did a 360 thing. It was really good. You should check it out.
It's something I want to do, but I know that like once I dive in it, I'm gonna be in deep for a while. Because like I have to leave whatever set I put up in the same exact spot. I have to figure out how to remove. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna set a timer and dive under a table for every shot. Like it's gonna be like some crazy like long process, but like even if I do a clip that's 5 seconds just to test it, it's gonna be something that'll be really cool to just like look back and look at.
Yeah.
Put yourself on the scale of like one of those Lego figures and have them running around doing God knows what, but like being able to like push perspective like that, like you could with a Matchbox car and a DSLR, and go out and put it in a parking spot next to like another car, but like frame it so it looks the same size. It's something you couldn't do, like force perspective.
It'd be really cool to have like a scene build itself. 360, so like you place the blocks. That'd be a lot simpler. Just like test it out and like start off like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like so like you put a Lego kit together, but do it piece by piece and let it build itself around.
Yeah. It reminds me of how like in the movie The Matrix, how the scene, like where they're at, like flies
the
around.
cameras, and they have them on that big you seen the behind the scenes of how they shot that, where it's on a big bullet time rig, and that was just wild.
All right, so you
Yeah,
guys,
so I'll see you guys later.
yeah, I think we've taken over an hour of your time. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you
No
so much
problem.
for talking with us.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Let me know if you have any questions. and share the I want to see that I want to see what you guys are working on. So like with the puppet project, that's cool. I love that stuff.
Follow us on Twitter and our Instagram.
Yeah.
Which account should I follow? Is it the?
It's at WVU Rapid.
Okay, yeah, I think I started following that, but I'll check. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Thanks.
Now we're on broadcasting.
And
This thing I have never